What's up, y'all? You're listening to the Extra Point College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Carnes, joined as always by my co-host, Daniel Hammock. Daniel, before we talk about Week 7, I mean, the Braves are coming off of going up 2-0, my friend. So, chop on, battle ATL. I mean, you and I are on an energy high.
Yes, is awesome. 2 straight walk-off wins by the Braves at home against the Dodgers. Now they have a day off and they travel to LA. So with that, I mean, we have time to talk about sport or talk about college football now that we've watched our Braves. So
I just feel bad the Braves have to go from beautiful Truist Park in Smyrna, this beautiful the Battery area for the fans. I'm just a little disappointed the Braves have to go play, to quote you, in the parking lot of a stadium, Dodger Stadium. So shout out Bill Plaschke. Hope you enjoyed your time in our real baseball stadium in Atlanta. So with that, let's get to college football. Week 7. I mean, every week's been great in college football. Week 7 was another one. Another big ranked team goes down. Another undefeated team goes down. A few undefeated teams went down. Some other crazy storylines with games we'll get to. Daniel, let's start. You want to start in Athens or Iowa City?
Let's eat our veggies first. Let's go Iowa City.
Iowa City. So Purdue had one of the greatest tweets ever after the game. And they said, we just beat the number 2 out of Iowa. And Purdue is known for knocking off number 2. Someone else said that Iowa said that they wanted to be like Ohio State. And they said, so here comes a butt whooping with a number 2 ranking. And they're like, wait, no, that's not what we
yes.
Like, wait, that's not what we meant. Look, Purdue dominated Iowa. And you want to know why, Daniel?
Why is that?
Because Iowa didn't have any points off turnovers. And so they lose 24-7. The offense is bad. It's bad. So they lose 24-7. Iowa themselves had 4 turnovers. But still, guess what? Purdue, no points off of turnovers, despite them forcing 4 turnovers. So, I mean, 460 yards of offense, 6.1 yards of play, 12.2 yards per completion. I mean, Purdue just beat them and beat them bad. And it kind of, I felt really good in that, I've been picking against Iowa saying this isn't sustainable. Well, it was sustainable for 6 games, but not for 7. So 6-1 1-6 picking against Iowa, and I will continue. We said last week 10-2, for Iowa seemed pretty realistic to me. Maybe it's 9-3 now. I wasn't even counting this one as a loss. So sorry, Iowa.
Yeah, it's one of those where, a team will eventually reveal their colors if you just give them long enough. And, it's tough because we've talked about, as far as ranking teams and things like that, Iowa had crept up there because they, at this point, had been elite on defense, which, one game, I'm not going to knock them, but I think they are a different category when you're talking about someone like Georgia versus an Iowa on the defensive side of the ball. Iowa's got a very, very good defense. It's been very opportunistic with the turnovers thus far, and they've won some big games. This is still a great season. It's tough because I feel like we are going to be negative on Iowa a little bit for how good their results have been given what the box score says, kind of how they're overperforming how they've played. And that's not their fault. They've just been doing what they need to do. But, we'll start to see, as the weeks play out, some of these teams who've either been inflated on their record because of teams that they played or whatever, that'll kind of play itself out, and vice versa. Some teams that have had difficult schedules, like a Nebraska or whoever else, and they've played tough games, they might get a break or two and really start to win some games down the stretch and make their record look nice and round.
Yeah. Iowa was not the second best team in the country. That was pretty evident to you and me. It became very apparent on Saturday night, and maybe we'll stop rewarding teams just for winning some games. So I don't even think they're the second best team in the Big Ten. I think they might be the 4th or 5th best team in the Big Ten. So that's where I'm at with Iowa. They were number 2. Georgia was number 1. I think if they played tomorrow, Georgia would be favored by 24 points. Like Vegas would set the line at 24. I feel pretty confident in that. Iowa goes down. Maybe we can stop talking about them, their points off the turnovers. But hey, they still control their own destiny. They can still go to the Big Ten championship. But that was definitely the biggest upset of the day. Shout out to Purdue. Best players in the field were Dylan Bell, George Karlaftis. They made themselves known. Big days for both of them. Shout out to Jeff Brom and Purdue. Let's go to Athens. Hey, the 2 undefeated teams for the SEC East. We tried to hype up this game as much as we could, as did the rest of the college football media. And look, Georgia wins by 17. The game was not that close. I'll walk away, impressed with Kentucky. I'll say, they're definitely the best team Georgia has played. Georgia looked the most vulnerable they've looked so far. To beat Georgia, to score on Georgia, you got to do 2 things, right? You either got to have just a masterclass of offensive play calling, which Kentucky did for one drive, and they got their first touchdown, right? A little bit of luck other way too with that fumble call. I think with the way they called the first one with Stetson Bennett and the way they called that one, they were the same exact way, called 2 different ways. So a little bit of a bailout there. But masterful drive to get their first touchdown. Second touchdown, 22 plays, 12 minutes off the clock. And you score to go down 17 as time expires. So that's how to score in Georgia. And they got 13 and they tried their hardest. Georgia, meanwhile, I just don't think Stetson Bennett's getting enough credit for what he's doing for Georgia. That being said, this is JT Daniels' team, no question. There's no quarterback controversy like in Athens. There's not. But, Stetson had a pass rating of 224 yesterday. 17.9 yards per completion. That's good.
Very, very good.
That's really good.
I saw another stat where Georgia is second in the SEC, or is it second in the nation? One of the two. I think it's second in the nation in plays of 20 plus yards or
passing
more.
plays of 20 plus yards. Yeah, behind Bama, who's
they're
number
second
1.
to Bama. Bama has 32 this year, and Georgia has 28. So, as far as perception goes, which I'm guilty of it. I think, I think defense first for Georgia because of how elite the defensive unit is, but the offense really is doing everything that they need to do when they want to do it. They're running the ball when they want to, they're passing the ball when they want to. It's just, the whole team is balanced, but the offense is really balanced right now. And I think that, like you were talking about with JT, when he comes back, I think there will be a thought among a lot of people that, hey, should they stay with Stetson Bennett? I think the coaching staff, I think everybody around the program understands that JT is the one that's just a tick better at all these things, but it really is, it's not a huge step down as far as, where you've got to change your play calling or you got to change all these other things. Their just efficiency tends to go up with JT Daniels throwing the ball just at a higher clip. His football IQ is up there as well, where it just game situations, all that kind of stuff, that just matters. And I think it's going to matter in a major game. I'd be hard pressed to find a team left on Georgia's schedule, maybe save for Florida, maybe, that Stetson Bennett shouldn't be able to handle as they go. And again, that's still me trying to relearn what Stetson Bennett is, because we saw him last year, and these are 2 different quarterbacks with how he played last year versus this year. We really do have to put some credit in, hey, he grew as a player from 1 year over year. Those experiences last year helped him this year. So that's something to keep in mind. I think Georgia's in a great position, whereas other teams are finding themselves without any quarterback at, like Clemson, for example, these places where they'd love to have an option. Georgia seems to have two right options at quarterback to win games and to win games comfortably. So, complementary factor for the team is it's not just offense or defense; their special teams is elite. So you put all that together, and it's a recipe for just it just feels like comfortable wins. Like what was it, 14-7 at halftime, and Georgia got the ball coming out of half, and they just marched down and scored pretty quickly. And when they scored, it just kind of felt like, okay, 21-7. I mean, nobody has scored more than 13 points on Georgia's defense this year. Like, this would be a task to get past this. Like, that may be, as far as just winning the game, nail in the coffin. Now, as the game played on, it was like, okay, Georgia, it looks like they're probably going to cover. And then they miss an extra point for the first time since.
It was the longest streak in college football.
Yeah, longest streak in college football. I think it was like 370 or something like that straight. So they missed the first one in several years. And then, so that was going to mess the cover up. But then, of course, it didn't really matter because Kentucky went down, like you said, that 22-play drive, milking the rest of the clock to put it on. But really, that tells me a couple of things. Mark Stoops and his team have a lot of pride. And what does that say about Georgia that should be flattering for Georgia and for their defense, that a team cares that much to score on them so that they can tell others that they scored on them, or it could be resume builder. Because looking at Kentucky's schedule, we're talking about Georgia because they're, still in that national title race and SEC championship race, all that kind of stuff. Kentucky, the rest of their schedule looks like they could probably run the table and be 11-1. And if they're sitting at 11-1 with how this has been so far this year, I mean, watch out.
The SEC's league leading rusher Chris Rodriguez, 7 carries for 7 yards. I mean, that's what Georgia's defense has done to. I mean, Wan'Dale Robinson, the SEC's leading pass catcher, 12 catches, 44 yards. Like, that's just what Georgia has done to these top players that have come in. This defense shuts them down. And look, it's been circulating, and this is how it started for one Devontae Smith last year, was just getting some momentum. Because here's the thing, Heisman voters, it's not like they're off of social media. They're on Twitter too. Public opinion does matter. And there's been some traction gaining for a defensive player winning the Heisman this year. There's really no transcendent quarterback. And you look at Georgia with the best defense in the country, and Jordan Davis getting some Heisman love. I'll tell you right now, one of the players in that defense would have my vote right now. I'll say that. Like, Jordan Davis is unbelievable. Nakobe Dean's unbelievable. But let's get it started right here on the extra point. We are here for a defensive player winning the Heisman. We're here for it. If we got to vote, we'd encourage this, whoever it is. But I mean, you can't go wrong with any of this Georgia defensive line right now. That's for sure. So Georgia heading to the bye week, 7-0 with the Gators on deck. Let's go to Baton Rouge. I mean, LSU down 20 scholarship players, both starting corners. They're starting safety. I mean, offense has lost players. Ed Orgeron, we now know, had already had conversations that they would be announcing a separation, a firing of Ed Orgeron. He's getting a buyout, so it's a firing. That conversation had already happened before the Florida game, that he was going to finish out this season and then be let go. They beat the Gators in Baton Rouge on Saturday, 49-42. I mean, shout out to Ed O for getting this team to care enough, because this is a team that could very easily just give up on this coaching staff and really not care to play anymore. And it could get real bad for LSU playing these games, but they go out and they beat Florida on Saturday. Does this say more about LSU's effort or Florida's lack thereof?
I think that effort's the tough one to talk about. I think if we're just talking about effort, I think it's more about LSU's effort in trying. Because effort I would put squarely on like where they end the game. And Florida crawled their way back in, especially offensively, and they looked competent to really, really good offensively. I know that might be disrespectful saying you trying to say competent with a 42-point score, but it took them a minute to get going. There's a lot of layers there that we could talk about with Florida here in a second, but um, I do think that, you know, the one thing I talked about when we were picking these games, I said, you know, hey, LSU, this could be addition by subtraction by getting some of these guys who don't believe out of the way, out of the locker room, and just getting, you know, who's ready to play, who can play, you know, get them on the field and let's go. So the talent, the recruiting profile has been too high for them to not be this good. They were missing 20 scholarship players, but you know, that'll bite them against some other teams. But Florida didn't have enough to counteract it. Florida right now, roster wise, isn't the kind of team that's just going to overwhelm LSU, even without those scholarship players that LSU is missing. So that was something to consider. But, you know, very weird, different kind of situation. I think that it, as far as the LSU coaching situation, which we can get into here in just a second, but the fact that they talked about this before the game, it was amicable, and then they announced it, you know, this after the game, after a win, kind of showing kind of solidarity and the fact that they're going to let Coach O coach the rest of the season. I think that this is wise for them because you don't want to turn the um, team over to somebody who's inexperienced and with a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. I just don't think that there's no one that was obvious on staff to kind of step in and be the interim. So firing him in the middle of the season wasn't going to make sense. I think announcing that they're going to be doing a search is helpful for a few reasons, but um, you know, Coach O, we'll see what happens with him. I do think that as weird as this is, he's comfortable in this role of being the interim head coach because he's done it at USC. He did it to get the LSU job. So it's weird that he's an interim head coach of a job that basically a lame duck head coach at this point. But, you know, it's just he's comfortable being uncomfortable. And I honestly would not be surprised to see them upset another team this year with how they play. That would not be surprising to me.
You know what else makes you comfortable, Daniel? How does $17 million sound?
That's a good.
That makes you comfortable too.
As he said, he could afford to buy a few hamburgers here and there.
Just a few. Just a
few.
So
Florida, I guess I just want to just mention this because I know we're going to talk about coaching stuff. Florida, they're going into a bye week as well. Jacob, they just put. It looked like Emory Jones was sat down at the most crucial parts of this game, and this game was turned over to Anthony Richardson.
Oh, he threw 3 touchdowns.
Do you think that this is a change in the guard and that Anthony Richardson is going to be the QB1 now for the Florida Gators going forward based on the results of this game? That's just what it looked like. It looked like Dan Mullen was trusting Anthony Richardson more when it mattered more. And then he had to turn back to Emory for a minute when Richardson got the hand injury, the finger injury. And then once Richardson was taped up or whatever, they brought him back out and then he finished the game.
The bye week's the time to do it, right? Like it's the perfect time to just like get 2 full weeks of reps the first team. But given how he's handled it this year, I have no reason to trust that Dan Mullen will make the right decision, and that's to start Anthony Richardson and only play Anthony Richardson. I think he might start Anthony Richardson. I think both will play against Georgia.
Okay.
And I think the first mistake Richardson makes, which, I mean, let's be realistic for a second. Against this Georgia defense, a lot of QBs make mistakes. Or it looks like they may make mistakes, but really it's just Georgia's execution. That's going to happen in that game. What you don't want to do is start Anthony Richardson. He takes a sack, he throws a pick, whatever against his defense, and then you pull him because of it. Because Georgia's defense has done that to everybody, and you're just going to lose confidence. You're also going to lose your locker room. The locker room knows who the better quarterback is.
Yeah.
Like, that's something Josh Pate's been big on. I think they play with quarterbacks, and I think that doesn't bode well for them in the Georgia game. Speaking of the Georgia game, I mean, what would you set the point spread at right now? Let's just make predictions. What will the point spread be in 2 weeks? Or I guess a week from now.
I mean, is it 17?
I was going to say 15 and a half, 16 and a half.
Okay. I was between 14 and 17, so that sounds about right. So with how Vegas has gone with these other games, Florida has more offensive firepower.
Yeah.
And they showed that. And they're definitely a competent offensive team. Defensively, they struggle with depth. They struggle with tackling. And I think those two things are going to wear out for any team that they play that has a balanced attack like Georgia or, overwhelming talent like Georgia. But interesting stat Chris Felica tweeted out before I give it, Jacob. I mean, perception-wise, at least nationally, rank these three in the past 2 years: Miami, Florida, Florida State.
I mean, Florida, Miami, Florida State, right?
Yeah, that would be the obvious ranking of the national perception.
Yeah.
And it has everything to do with head coach and big games and things like that. They're all three are 4-6 in their last 10 FBS games. So all three of them have a 4-6 record in their last 10 FBS games.
I wonder how UCF has done their last. Well, they don't really play. Well, they play FBS. I said that wrong.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're also 4-6. That sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah.
All right. LSU at Orgeron. It's officially announced today. Ross Dellinger is the first to report it of SI. They had a press conference this afternoon. Letter released. Edo out at the end of the season. They're going to start their search. Scott Woodward. He's been known to make a splash with his head coaching hires. This is the same guy who hired James Franklin. This is the same guy who hired Jimbo Fisher. Daniel, we've seen some names at this point. A lot of names are going to be talked about because agents are going to throw, their
anybody and everybody out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Just get their names out there. Give me your top, your LSU, and you get to make the hire. Give me your top three.
My top three at LSU would be Joe Brady.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Brady. So I just really believe that if you're wanting to do the offensive thing like they did a couple years ago, 2019, you can't bring Joe Burrow back, but you can bring Joe Brady back.
You can do.
And the right time to do it is right now, because Joe Brady is going to coach himself into becoming a head coach in the NFL here in a few years, and you're not going to be able to get him if he's a head coach in the NFL. So if you want him, now is the time. So that's why I'm so keen on Joe Brady, because I think that if they want to recreate what they did a couple years ago, the best way to do it is with Joe Brady. Outside of that, I'm looking at a program builder, someone like I know that Ross Dellinger, I think, mentioned some Mel Tucker or something like that. I think that's probably good. I would actually go someone who was there recently, Dave Aranda. I like Dave Aranda, what he's already done at Baylor. The defense looks stout. I think that
offense looks a lot better.
He knows what he's doing. I think that he's just a smart guy. And I think that he was part of that brain trust that really so I've just named two coordinators that were on that 2019 team, but I think that that's important. You have to know the lay of the land. Aranda is a good recruiter, but an even better tactician and coach. I think that makes for a well-organized, organization. Someone else that I really am interested in, I'm curious if it's going to happen. It would be something similar to how Sam Pittman or Shane Beamer have gone from being an assistant who is never a coordinator to becoming a head coach. Georgia's got a guy who just keeps recruiting and recruiting and recruiting, and it's Del McGee. And I think that he is holding out for an SEC job because he could probably go be a head coach at an FBS school. And I think that he's just too stingy on the recruiting trail to recruit anything less than 4 and 5 stars. And he is an elite upon elite recruiter. He's the assistant head coach. If anytime Kirby's out, like he's calling the shots in Athens. He's orchestrating a lot of the recruiting trips and everything like that. He's the running backs coach, but really assistant head coach is the big deal. They're in Athens. Obviously, you've seen Sam Pittman go to become Arkansas's head coach after being offensive line coach at Georgia. I think you could see something similar soon with Del McGee. I think he's the worst kept secret in Athens because everybody loves him. And I think he's one of those guys that's going to be just like hit the ground running, ready to go. He's probably got several contacts that are just ready to be his offensive and defensive coordinators. So he's someone who's kind of off the radar that I'd look at. But I mean, I'm making Joe Brady tell me no, and then I'm offering him more money, and I'm making him tell me no again, and then I might offer him more money. So that's where I'm at.
Do you have 2 more? Because I kind of have 5. I want to try to narrow it down to 3, and I'm like, I can't.
I mean, I mentioned Mel Tucker as that, guy that's out there. And then I wrote down Jimbo ? And Kiffin ?
So I was going to put those 2 together in that Scott Woodward is going to make somebody's got to tell him no, right?
Mm-hmm.
LSU, you and I ranked LSU as the second best job in the country, right? Like with a combination for a lot of reasons. It's a great episode to go back and listen to. So all right, top 5. This is in no order. These are all head coaches currently. All right. So Mel Tucker, James Franklin. Oh gosh, I'm losing.
Billy
It wasn't
Napier?
Jimbo, but Billy Napier. Thank you. I was like, again, someone who knows the state, a Saban assistant, like
SEC
has been
guy.
holding out. It's
Yeah.
like has been holding out. He's already in the state. It's like already have relationships with like the high schools, that kind of, he knows what's out there. Here's an underrated one. I mentioned this with the USC job. Charles Huff. All right. Former assistant coach at Alabama, current head coach at Marshall. All right. I mean, this is the guy who recruited J.C. Latham, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Damon Payne, Miles Sanders. You know what all those guys have in common? 5 stars. Like he was an elite recruiter at Alabama. Like, and the fact that Marshall hired him as a head coach, again, having never been a coordinator, like great hire by Marshall, so similar to the whole Sam Pittman thing. I think he's a guy that can come back to the SEC. He knows how relentless of a recruiter you have to be. And you have to be a relentless recruiter because number one, if you're LSU, you're going to get everybody in state. Like, as long as you get a relentless recruiter there, like it's hard to get kids out of Louisiana. It's difficult if you're doing your job at LSU. And I think he could do that. And then, yeah, Lane Kiffin. Like, can you imagine Lane Kiffin at LSU? That is sexy.
I love it.
Like, I love the idea of Lane at LSU. I love it. Like, Josh Pate talked about, playing against Nick Saban in Alabama is not a minus. That is a plus to a competitor. Lane eats it up. Like, only thing with LSU is, and I think Lane's the real deal. I think he's a phenomenal head coach, phenomenal offensive mind. Like, his team loves him. His players love him. He knows what he's doing. I'm like, is he serious enough for LSU? Like, if they can deal with some of the, like, at Ole Miss, Lane can pretty much do whatever he wants, like, forever at Ole Miss. And he might be very, very happy there. He might not want the pressure.
Like, it might be the perfect marriage of,
like they can go 9-3
plus, yeah.
And like he's probably raised Ole Miss's floor to like 8-4. If he's doing that every year at Ole Miss, they're very happy, and they're going to keep extending him.
And then you keep partying and having great tailgates and all.
So he may love it, but again, I'm making Lane tell me no. I don't think Jimbo's realistic because of how much his buyout is. I know LSU has a lot of money, but He just re-upped with A&M.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't make
A&M,
sense.
they just beat Bama. They might throw some don't pick up the phone money at him and a
Yeah.
bonus or something. So I think it's going to be a splash. This coaching search will be very fun because this will have an effect on the USC search. LSU is going to have their guy first.
With Lane, I think that the draw there, obviously LSU's a better job than Ole Miss. The draw would be, okay, I get, like, right now he gets to play Saban every year at Ole Miss, but let's be real. If he beats Saban at Ole Miss, it's going to be thought of as mostly a fluke or a some sort of a a one-off, like a one,
Yeah.
hey, he got him this one time, conditions were right, whatever. He got everything broke his way. Well, when you go to LSU, the talent profile is severely upgraded, and you're almost, if you're doing it right, you're on just about an even plane with Alabama as far as the skill profile. So, team talent composite, they're not far. They're not, they're
I'm
when I
looking.
say far off, they're not. No. I think they're in the 60s. I think they were 60%, and Bama was 80 something percent. So
Yeah, the blue chip ratio, they are 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth in the country at 66%.
yeah,
And as far as team talent composite goes, their roster was ranked. Let's see if it's also fifth. Their roster is ranked LSU. Also fifth. Yep.
so it's you're in striking distance where beating them could be like you're playing more on an equal ground than you are with Ole Miss. With Ole Miss, he's having to scheme the heck out of some stuff and pray that he's having to do the go for it on fourth down every fourth down. He's having to do all that. With LSU, they can trade blows with one another. And I think that, like you were saying with the competitor thing, like the competitor thing is, okay, if we have equal resources, am I better than you? And Lane wants to prove that, I think. So that would be the draw. Otherwise, if it's about the other stuff, like the being goofy and being silly and doing whatever he wants, in Oxford, then yeah, he'll stay in Mississippi. He'll stay at Ole Miss.
All right. I love it. We have a good list of names. Again, schools should hire us for their coaching search. I think we'd give them great.
I think so.
We give them great candidates. Daniel, what are the games you want to hit? I mean, I have a few of my JK's takeaways, little quick hitters that I tweet on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. You can follow me there. That K is important. I mean, Oklahoma's got their quarterback.
Yeah.
Are they going to lose a game with Caleb Williams at quarterback?
Not till they play Texas. And I'm just kidding. Oklahoma State took care of Texas. So
they might be out of the Big 12 championship now. I'm a little upset.
Is it going to be Bedlam 2 times? And Oklahoma just kind of gets to walk through to the potential playoff. No, I don't know. Caleb Williams is the dude, and I think that sky's the limit for this Oklahoma roster. They start believing, and just everything starts clicking. Offensive line's the biggest thing. I mean, if the offensive line is figured out, the quarterback's figured out, everything else was kind of working. So,
to quote Bud Elliott, Bedlam can be played out 2 different ways: Oklahoma by a little, Oklahoma by a lot.
Yeah,
there's Bedlam. Oklahoma, if they play like that, will be competing for a national championship. Like, they're in the playoff, and now it's like they're screwing around and messing up resulted in no losses.
Right.
So if they're clicking now, like they kind of screwed around and didn't let it slip completely. Like they didn't let that clunker go to a loss. They won their clunkers. So yeah, at this point, I think you're looking at a 13-0 Oklahoma in the college football playoff. I'll say that, in my opinion.
To quote Charles Barkley in the 1992 Olympics, I don't know who Angola is, but I know they're in some trouble. All right. So I don't know who Oklahoma is playing the rest of the year or in the Big 12 championship, but I know they're in some trouble.
So Oklahoma regular season wise, they still have, oh boy, Kansas, Texas Tech bye week before Baylor. Which now, how nice is that? Might be the best team to play.
Oh yeah,
Um,
best defensive team for sure. But
Iowa State and Oklahoma State. So those last 3 games,
some bugaboos. But I mean, if you got Caleb Williams, it's like
that's what I'm saying. Like if they're scoring 52, who's scoring 52 with them? You know what I mean? Like nobody, scoring 52 with them.
Oklahoma State is generally like year in year out. You're like, oh yeah, they've got a good offense. But like this year, their defense is their big help, like their big push. Baylor is a good defensive team, and then Iowa State is very much a control the clock, defensive, run the ball, do your thing team. So yeah, none of those have the kind of profile that can go score for score with Oklahoma. So I definitely think that OU has taken that step that they needed to by making the change. I do commend Lincoln Riley for, I mean, I don't want to say waiting till the last minute. He waited till the right moment because I think if he changes too early and it doesn't work, I think he made the move when he had to. And, he let it play out on the field the right way, and everybody got to see it for themselves. Rattler, a good player, but it just wasn't clicking. And all of a sudden, Caleb Williams, it's just like it just unlocked the potential.
Oklahoma State beats Texas. Oklahoma State is Iowa. So now they're number 8 in the AP poll, and I'm just like, no. Like, no,
It's
they're
like they
not.
just have lasted this long undefeated.
Like people forget they beat Boise State by 1. Like they beat Missouri State by 6. Like the Tulsa by 5. You think they're gonna keep this up in the Big 12? I'm like, absolutely not. They got Iowa State next, and Iowa State's gonna beat them. Iowa State, sneaky good. Sneaky good. They lost 2 games and everyone forgot about them. Like their top 10 darling died. Sneaky good. They can finish 10-2 still and go to the Big 12 championship. So watch out for Iowa State. I'm jumping back on the Cyclones train. Week 8. Here we go.
That's all you gotta do. They'll be all right. As far as other games to mention, I mean, only one I really want to talk about last, that we need to is Tennessee and Ole Miss.
How do we forget? Ole Miss and Tennessee.
Like Ole Miss had multiple times in this game where it looked like they were about to pull away. Tennessee, to their credit, stayed in this game. Hendon Hooker orchestrating the offense, looks like a difference maker. But there was problems, man. I mean, he was hit a lot when he was running the ball. I mean, he left the game, after taking that final hit, and it just was like, I mean, he gave everything he had. I haven't seen the prognosis on what exactly it was, but it looked like he needed a few games off, based on how he just kept performing. And then he that last drive, which we'll get to the little intermission that we call it, between the final act and the third act, but that was something. He was driving down the field and then he scrambles and then gets tackled, has to come off the field. They bring in Joe Milton for those last couple plays. It's nice to have talented backups and everything like this, but it'd be even nicer if they were accurate with the ball or had presence of mind to not, try to run the ball when, like, just give your guys a chance. You're close, you're in striking distance, throw the ball up, give them the best chance. But that was Matt Corral, in that game. What did he run for? Just south of 200 yards, I think 195, and he threw for like 230. He took a loss on his last rush, which put him under 200 yards. But he would have been – Johnny Manziel was the only other one to do that, 200 yards rushing and 230 yards passing or more. So Corral, I mean, with everybody out, just a tremendous performance. But of course, none of what I've talked about just now had anything to do with the big story, which was, a potential SEC officiating error in a 4th and 24 play that looked like it got 23 and a half yards, maybe 24, but was marked short. And Tennessee fans did not like that. There was a minute left in the game, right? It was like 58 minutes, 58 seconds.
A little over a minute because it'll miss. Anyway, it was right at a minute.
It was right around a minute. Anyways, that ensued where fans in Neyland Stadium started throwing stuff on the field, including mustard bottles, just regular Gatorade bottles, a golf ball, which was not like one you play with. It was one from like a range ball.
Oh yeah,
like a practice ball that they threw and hit.
It was
a putt ball, is what it was.
It was one of those balls where after you hit it on the 18th, you're not getting it back. It's going back to the cashier. It was one of those balls.
Yeah, got a bunch of dings in it that weren't there when it was made.
Bunch of scums.
Yeah. So that hit Lane Kiffin in the arm.
I mean,
and we've seen this in sports before, so I don't want to make it like they've done something that nobody else has ever done before. But in those instances, this kept going. It lasted 30 minutes trying to get from that play and the fans starting to throw trash to then finally being able to resume play. 30 minutes. Like, I just don't understand. And I feel like Lane did a good job of just kind of being classy and just keeping everything above board when they were interviewing him about it. But, I mean, that was wild. I was scared for the players' safety with what they're – I mean, I don't know. After seeing the golf ball, I was like, okay, they could really be throwing some bad stuff. It's not just empty Gatorade bottles, which, yeah, those probably suck to get hit with if you're throwing them far down. It probably sucks to get hit with anything. But a golf ball, that could really – hurt you. So, I mean, I got concerned for the players, and I was like, they need to just call this thing. What's going on?
And it was funny because, people who bet on the game, it was like, if they do have to call it and it goes final, like they're allowed for it to go final because they had played 59 minutes. Like it was under a minute when it happened.
Right.
It is funny. 2 shout outs. Shout out to Joe in section 218. I don't know the name of anyone who did it, but who brought their own mustard bottle. I don't know what reason. I like to imagine it's that, like, the stadium uses Heinz mustard, and I'm a French's guy myself.
I'm a French's guy. Yeah, I've been a French's guy my whole life.
Given the dip, that mustard bottle was like half full. So shout out to the fan who got it to the field because they might be playing quarterback for Tennessee soon. So shout out to that. And then
do you think it was filled with moonshine though? Like it was just another flask?
I don't know. I like to think I just like my, like, you know what? I don't like that Heinz mustard. I'm bringing my own. I love that. And then shout out to Lane Kiffin for Odell Beckhaming the bottle that was thrown at him. And now that we've seen alternate angles, Daniel, that Dasani bottle was not just any Dasani bottle. That was a spit bottle, like a dip bottle. It was full of just like, brown gunk. That's what it was full of.
Jacob, we call that a spittoon. All right,
that was a spittoon. There you go. I don't know, but that's what it was.
Shout out Ryan McManus. He taught me that.
Like, that's what was thrown at Lane Kiffin. So somebody got one last spin in and then said, "This one's going to Lane," and he Odell Beckham and then threw up his visor. I love it. I love it. Oh,
that was a great move.
Not a great look for that fan base though. I was just reading stuff. The rumor for Hendon Hooker is ACL. So nothing official yet. Patrick Brown of GoVols 24/7 saying nothing official yet, but it didn't look good. And the rumors are ACL.
Jacob, I know that there's a lot to discuss here, but if you're Tennessee, do you try to ride it out with Joe Milton, or are you trying to work in Harrison Bailey? Because we know he was a talented freshman last year that played sparingly. I mean,
Did you say French's Joe from section 218? Because that's my vote. No, I think it's Joe Milton. It was his job to begin with. It was his job really kind of all fall camp, from what we heard. And he kind of, he impressed him enough in practice. He's got the arm. He just got to calm down. Like, honestly, that ball he threw in the end zone was not that bad. It did go through someone's hands.
No, it was fine.
The mistake he made at the end, again, it's a mistake. These are college kids. Like, him playing a full game, we saw in game one what he can do. He's more than capable. It's just he has such a wide variance. Also
against Bowling Green.
Agreed. So, he has such a wide variance.
Yeah. I just with Hooker, I just feel like it kind of unlocked their offense and it took off.
100%.
And so that's why I'm like, I would lean towards them playing two quarterbacks and then seeing where it goes from there. But we'll see. I do agree that Milton, it was his job to lose, so he probably does just plug right back in.
I'm just on the Tennessee board, and it's great. People they're rooting for Milton because it's not looking good for Hendon Hooker. But hey, a great week 7, a great week 8 ahead. Don't let people tell you it's not an exciting week just because there's not ranked on ranked matchups. This is a very exciting week for college football. A lot of great matchups. We're going to have to narrow down our 7 games again. But hey, you can follow him on Twitter at Deep South Daniel. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Carnes with a K. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at the Extra Point Pod. We're going to post our XPR here in a couple of days. You just sent me your rankings and I just ran the numbers, and I'll give you a hint, our top 4 did not change. So we're riding steady. And guess what? Our top 4 is actually our preseason playoff. So things are turning out to be A-okay for our preseason predictions. But hey, that will do it for this edition of The Extra Point. He is Daniel. I am Jacob.